you so much for joining. We're going to go over legal research assignment. The website I'm on right now is for law students. It's www.lexisnexis.com/law school. I just Google Lexis Law School and you'll get the sign in and you'll come here. This is where you'll go to the research system by entering into Lexis Plus. But just so you know, this is where my contact information will be, your student reps, and more resources for you. I wanted to point out Lexis Learn really quickly because they're self-guided modules right here that you can watch in little video interactive chunks on the legal research process. So expanding case law, secondary, all the different things that we are working on today will be broken down into videos and so much more. I don't like to talk a lot about Lexis points in a legal research training class, but I will point out that your points are located here and where you shop and spend points are all located under your Manage Reward tab. Let's go into Lexis Plus. I'll get to the search bar in one moment, but first let me point out on the right side of your screen, there's Law School Resources here, where you'll find resource centers for 1Ls and 2Ls and a whole center just on brief and memo resources. So these are tips on writing briefs and memos and guidance that you can look for and take a quick peek at before beginning one of these assignments. Today, explain using federal law how a plaintiff suffered a constructive discharge from her employer and that employer is permitted to use prior salary as a differential based on any other factor other than sex as a term used in the Equal Pay Act, and you have a statute number. So when entering terms in, I find the ones that seem most compelling, that have a little bit of the law involved and some key facts, anything that stands out to me that I want to see in my result set in all of the documents. So I found equal pay, the statute number, prior salary, and the phrase other than sex. Now, I could have used the whole phrase differentials other than sex, but it doesn't really matter. I'm using the key component of it, and so I have that here. Now, I can take this and make it a little bit more powerful because when I leave it just like this, I have solid terms here, but nothing in between. Lexis will run that based on relevancy. This is a really good first search. When we're not sure what's going to be in our result set, we're just kind of taking a stab of putting some terms out there and seeing what we get. When I change my search and include and between all my terms, that's a connector that I'm now telling Lexis, you must put equal pay, the statute, prior salary, and other than sex, that phrase, in every result. So I'm ensuring that each of these will be in all my results. If I'm worried about equal separated, I can always put this in quotes as well, and Lexis will keep that phrase together as well. Lexis does know a lot of common phrases, so we don't always need to do that, but you don't know what Lexis knows, so it's fine to quote things. I can change and be even more specific as to the location of my terms by saying /P same paragraph. And now I'm saying that all of these terms must be in the same paragraph with each other. If I think that one of these will not be in the same paragraph, it might just be anywhere, then we can leave one as an and. So I want equal pay and I want the statute number in the same paragraph as prior salary, in the same paragraph as other than sex. And I can run this search or any type of search similar to this to get results. For training purposes, I'll leave it pretty general. I'm going to leave all content in all jurisdictions to come up because we are looking at getting the most content back and then we can filter later. Lexis is organized a lot like Amazon, where you have your departments off to the left-hand side, and you can see we're in bold in case law right now where my results are populating for cases in the middle of the screen, and my filters are just below. These are my filters for case law because that's the database that I'm in. Most of the time, we start our legal research assignments in secondary materials to get that background information on the law, a better understanding of what legal terms we need, the elements that we need to prove, any tests for balancing tests, factorial tests, things like that. All that information would come from secondary materials, which is, like I said, usually step 1. I have a little half step that when practical guidance pops up with some resources, these can be a little bit easier to digest than some of these in-depth secondary materials. The practical guidance is made by leading attorneys for new attorneys or people just like yourself to get a good idea of what the law is. So this is a really nice starting place, and I call it a half step. So point 5 will come in, and I only want to tell you to spend about a minute of your time here. So we're going to look for practice notes, on practice notes because those are notes by attorneys for younger attorneys. You're not going to need checklists and things right now. You're not actually working on this where you're working with a client and need templates and forms. So we just want to focus on the notes. And I have one that comes up and it looks like it's on the Equal Pay Act and dealing with compliance of it. So that seems where we want to be, and I'm going to come on in. And let's take as much of this as we can before diving into those really deep secondary materials. I like to start at the top. It's talking about covered employees. We're not really worried about that. We are talking about a very specific memo, which is dealing with employer defenses to the Equal Pay Act, whether or not our employer has a defense to this claim against them for equal pay. So when I jump on down, I can start to read a little bit more about these defenses that an employer may want to use other than sex. And so we've got some systems here, and we've got the statute number and a little more information here, and the start of some case law and a catch-all exception. And you can see it goes on to help me start to get the bigger picture on these defenses. After reading this and getting a little bit more understanding, it's time to go back into step 1 and check out the secondary materials. I'm going to tell you your filters. These are the same filters that I apply when I'm working with an attorney. This is the plan for life, okay? Almost always, you're going to start with treatises and guides. These are practice guides that attorneys use to help understand the law. Now, AmJurs and ALRs are under jurisprudence. I like to do this secondary. I know your assignment oftentimes will tell you to go to the AmJurs and ALRs, so you can go here first if you need to, and you can see ALRs are located right here. You definitely could click them both and have the results come out on the screen at the same time, but I like to separate things out. We're going to go to treatises and guides right now. I'm going to tell you my other filters that I like to apply. I go down to jurisdiction. Now, if I'm dealing with a California state issue, then I may want to go into California and see what treatises talk about California state law. We're dealing with federal law, so I'm going to apply the federal jurisdiction. And I'm also going to share with you if your state isn't listed here or you're not getting enough resources back, we have a button called non-jurisdictional, which will pull from resources that are not specific to one state, but are still very helpful understanding of all states and the law across the country. So I definitely can pick federal and non-jurisdictional and see the best quality resources we have. To see the names of the secondary sources populating in my results set now, I can open up my sources tab. Now, this is something I personally like to do. You could narrow further by practice area. If you wanted to, we could put in employment law at this point. But personally, I like to see the names of the secondary sources that are populating so I can see what looks best to me. I can see that there's a lot of different books here that have to do with employment law, but I have one specifically on wage and hour law, and that's what we're talking about because we're talking about an Equal Pay Act that discusses wage and hour. So I'm going to go to that one first. It looks like it's talking about defenses to the prima facie case. It's looking pretty good to me. They're talking about my statute. So I'm going to come in and take a look at that. Certainly, I could release this filter and go into another secondary source if I wanted to take a look. From here, we can see this whole chapter is about the Equal Pay Act and the defenses that I may want to look at. And for each of these, we're looking at some of the same things you saw in the practice guide. This defenses that businesses may use to try to show there was not a violation of the Equal Pay Act. Every time you see one of these footnotes, you can jump down and see the case or the law where that piece of information came from. So we're always checking to see what the footnotes are. I don't encourage you to click out to these footnotes right now, because if you start clicking out past the secondary source page, you're going to lose the thread of this secondary source and all the good material that you have here. So I encourage you, when this is something so on point to your research, to take the time and read this in much more detail. A lot of 2Ls and 3Ls will tell me what they like to do is open up one of the cases that looks good to them, and they immediately hit their back browser to come back and read the screen that they are on. By opening up that page, they now know that that case will be located in their history, and so they can get back to it on the Documents tab. There's that case. So it's like a bookmarking it for them. Some of the things I like to do when I'm in a secondary source is pop open my table of contents. This helps me better see what I'm looking at on the page. I can make sure that I'm reading the sections that I need, and perhaps reading around this chapter to try to see if there's any other pieces of this chapter that are going to be helpful to me before I move on and go back to my results. Remember, I told you that this was just one secondary source from the Wage and Hour Law book, that at this point I may want to go into jurisprudence and check out those AmJurs and ALRs. A nice research assignment would include about 2 to 3 good secondary sources that help you understand the law. Now from here, we're ready for step 2, which is to go into that statute. You have the name of your statute, and we can definitely type it into the search bar, 29 USC 206, and pull it open. I'm going to show you the long way of going there just in case you need to know how to find it. And we go to statutes and legislation, and I select codes because I'm talking about the USC, which is a federal code. Now, if you're using this for a constitutional amendment, that's another assignment that you may have, and you're dealing with the Constitution. Constitution would pop up here, and you could select the Constitution instead of codes. Now we need to pick our jurisdiction. It looks like our statute's right here ready to pop up, but just in case, you'll know that I would want the US federal for US federal codes, and we're ready to go in. Now at this stage, we want to read the statute in Lexis. Because we're in Lexis Plus AI, we get a nice summary of the statute that's generated because you're part of a Lexis AI platform right now. And past that, you will have the statute itself. So we're paying attention to the statute. We want to know if there's a particular subsection of the statute that's important to us. If you're told the subsection, then we're looking for that. And the way we read this is we look at the top, we go to the leftmost side, and we see that that's subsection A, and we need subsection D, so we keep following that down. B, we're following it down. C, D, D1, and then subsection D1, 4, and here is the piece that we're looking for our assignment. Now, once we know that, and we know what the law is, we're ready to use this statute to find more resources. So this part of the research plan is to how to use a statute to find more resources. One way is to open up these tabs on the left-hand side, search terms. You'll see this jumps you to different parts of the document. And one of the parts is the notes of decisions. Occasionally, this is called case notes, but you're looking for the cases that discuss or interpret this statute. And they're usually organized by a table of contents. Now, we are talking about a big United States code. There's a lot going on here and a lot of notes. So we need to go through this table of contents with a fine-tooth comb. And I start reading at the top, and I'm looking for the section that pertains to me. And I scroll down, and I see sexual discrimination in wages. So we're getting a little bit closer. We're going to scroll a little bit slower. Non-wage differentials, we're getting a little bit more on point here, and looking to see which one of these seems most relevant to us. Now we've got different types of jobs populating. If advertising is the job that you're employee is in, you might want to take a look at this one and see if that's a case that pertains to you. Some of the facts apply. And then I would keep going down because there may be more than just the one that has to do with our topic. Non-sex wage differentials. I might want to take a look at it generally and then start to see, well, what are the types of defenses that my employer may use and my employer may use compensation of an employee. So right here, 100 is prior salary, essentially previous compensation of employee. And I can jump down and really start to read what this is all about and the different types of cases that Lexis is suggesting to me. I'm seeing now a Cuba case and a Rizzo case and a Wurzing case. And I want you to know, just like in the secondary source, spend your time reading here and getting as much as you can out of it, but also making the mental note of some of these major cases that Lexis has pinpointed for you. Now, a lot of times what you guys like to do is use Control Find, and I can definitely do that. So I'm going to pop open my Control Find right now, and we're looking for the terms prior salary. So at this point, I'm looking to see all the different times prior salary is showing up in case I'm missing something. And sure enough, there's section 100. So one way or another, I would have found this if typing in prior salary. If there's any other types of defenses or terms that seem relevant to you that you want to search for, you can use Control Find and jump around and find those sections here. So what we just did is use the notes of decisions to help you find cases that are interpreting the statute that you need. Next, we've got citing decisions here. These are all the cases that cite this code section. What a wonderful body of research right here, which is all the cases citing the same code section that you need. So I'm going to pop it open and we're going to start using our narrowing filters right away. Sometimes you're going to see this not available. There's too many references. It doesn't always come up, but this is a lot of citing decisions here, over 20,000. So it's basically asking us, can you please narrow to something before we get started? A really easy way to narrow is to weed out unreported cases. So I'm going to take my reported cases now, and you'll see that little note go away because we've jumped down from 20,000 down to 4,000. And now I just want the federal courts. So we're looking at federal court decisions that are reported. At this point, I can start going through the cases, but I still have a lot here. So here's where I can enter in some extra terms like prior salary, and I might do something like this. Prior salary. What this means is when I squish at least together, and I have no spaces, ATLEAST, I picked the number 3. It can be any number you want, but I usually pick the numbers 3, 4, or 5. It means whatever inside the parentheses must be in my document at least 3 times. So we're taking a term that's a little general, like prior salary, and making sure that the court is having some nice discussion about it because it's mentioned several times. And we've gone down now from 3,000 cases to 33 cases that I may want to take a look at now that are talking about prior salary. But I have one more button here that's really helpful. So I'm going to release that, and I'm going to now look at court treatment of subsections. We're talking subsections of your statute, and we liked D14, right? Apologize for this, but Lexis hasn't been working today, and I need to put in a ticket. Usually what happens when I come to this screen is it will give me different types of ways that my statute has been cited, and I'm going to flip through these and find the one that says 206 D14, and we'll go into that list. The page will look exactly like this, only it will have my subsection here, and I know then when I use these same filters and perhaps use prior salary again as a filter, that not only am I looking at cases that are reported that talk about prior salary, but they cite not just the general statute, but my particular subsection of the statute. So that report would be more on point. I'm sorry this feature is not working today, but feel free to ask me questions and I can help you through it. Customer support is always here for you as well. All right, we're going to go back now because we've just used 2 ways to use a statute to find more, which was those case annotations and the case notes from the statute itself, and we used our citing decisions. We're ready to move on to the next step. So there's with the notes of the decisions and the citing decisions. We're ready to go back to our results. And the next step of this process is to go to case law. Gathered a lot of research at this point. We're starting to see the same cases pop up again and again from our practical guidance section, secondary materials, our statutes. All the same cases are starting to talk about the law that I need for my assignment. And now we're ready to go into case law. So these are the filters that you want to apply. The first one obviously is court. So we're just going to pick federal right now and be in all federal. And then again, it's important that we stay in published cases. So I'm going to get down to 92 published cases. Okay, so our cases are starting to populate in the middle of the screen. And it's kind of cool because our terms are associated with different colors. So I can actually click on these and see, well, where is it talking about prior salary? And I can click on that color and start to see how my terms are showing up in these cases. Attorneys love this feature because from just this little tidbit, they can see whether or not this is a case they want to open up. We are going to take a look at a different view of your cite list. We're in this graphic view right now that includes these colors. We're going to switch to Ravel view right now. This is another view of your cite list. It takes the first 75 cases and puts them on a map. It's a heat map that shows you how cases have influenced each other. And you can see the bigger the bubble, the more influential these cases are to each other for the search terms you typed in. It's organized on this axle going up. By further up you go, the higher up the court. Further right you go, the more recent in time. So I can see most of them are citing this old case, Cuba, from the 1980s. And I can start to see what's going on here. If I click it, it's just zeroing in on the map, and I can see there is one case here that's been given a red line, and I want to pay attention to those red lines because they're the ones that are concerning to me. This might show that this case has been overturned. And sure enough, this case has. This is an old case from the 80s, and I've got this newer case here that's overruling this law. So I want to definitely take a look at this case, what is overruling the law. And it looks like this case is now citing some of these other cases more recent in time. So that is one of the trouble of using an old case. While it is influential, it has been overturned because our policies have changed over time. And so this Rizzo case is one I want to take a look at because it seems to be the new way that courts are treating this issue. So once I find a case that I like, I can go on into it. Now, this next step is using a case to find more resources, okay? So we are going to go through your cite list many different ways, find the cases that look important to you. In fact, let's go back and take a look really quickly. I failed to mention one thing, so I'm going to take you back, and we are in our Ravel view right now. I'm going to switch to graphical view. Now is the time when you really want to focus in on this search within results bar. This is important because you want to find cases that are talking about very specific pieces of your hypo, of your fact pattern that you can analogize to. So we're starting to learn that there are other defenses that our employer may use to say that they didn't use sex as a reason for a difference in salary. They used another factor. So we'd want to put those factors in and see, well, what are the other cases that talk about that? So I may say something like this of the law, which is other than sex, and I'm putting it in the same paragraph as another term that I'm looking to put in my memo assignment. So if I'm looking for those different reasons that I'm going to use to analogize to, I may want to say the employer is going to say that they changed their salary based on merit. So we use merit as a term and we try to narrow down what cases are talking about merit. And we can start scrolling through here and seeing the cases that focus in a little bit more on the cases that have our extra terms in it. And I use this little formula, which is this. You can see it when I expand this, other than sex, that's a piece of the law. So I'm taking a piece of the law or the standard or the test in the same paragraph as a fact of mine. And that's like a little formula you can use. The law in the same paragraph as the fact. Okay, so now let's go back into the Rizzo case. I'm going to wrap up by telling you how to use this case to find more resources. So the first thing we're going to do is start reading the case, and we're going to pay attention to the head notes. You learn that head notes have to do with rules of law coming out of this case, and we want the one that's really discussing the heart of our issue, that money passage, heavily relying on for our memo. It looks like head notes 17 and 18 are talking a little bit about prior salary, although they're calling it prior pay. So that's one of the problems with focusing in on terms alone is salary or pay. We need to make sure that we're catching these cases, even if we use a different term. But it looks like this is the right area that we want to be in, and so I'm going to jump down. So once you find a passage that you really like and you want to cite that in your memo, look for this little magnifying glass off to the side. It's the more like this passage feature. And when I click it, it's asking you, is this the exact passage you want us to use, or do you want to trim it? I'm just going to click it open right now. And now we're looking to see other cases and secondary materials that Lexis recommends based on the passage of text that you were looking at. So these are other cases that you can take a look at. The good thing about using this feature is that it's a new feature that uses AI technology to find these cases that you might want to reference as well. Cases that follow this argument also are listed here for you, so you can use those. And they're much more reliable than other ways to find cases that are similar to your case. All right, I'm going to use this arrow, zip up to the top. And once again, we have citing decisions as well here. So I'm not going to walk you through this as much as we did before because we did the same step with the statutes. You're going to apply the same filters. Remember, for all of your big cases, this is a wonderful tactic to use. Those influential cases, perhaps the ones that are big bubble cases on your Ravel view, these would be great cases to open up and go to your citing decisions tab. Again, we're looking for the same filters. I want reported cases that are citing my case from the federal jurisdiction and that mention some specific facts that I want to add in here. And we can use that same formula other than sex/P and then a fact that you put in. So please use these same tactics. They're wonderful tactics to help you zero in on the right cases. Before we wrap up, I want to spend a moment talking about AI and how you can use AI throughout your research process to help you better understand what you're reading. So to make those connections between a passage of text in a case and your set of facts. Let's take a look. Okay, we're in Lexis AI right now. Actually, I did a little switcheroo on you. We're in Lexis Protege. That's the new update that's coming to student IDs very soon. So I wanted to switch so you'd see what it looked like. I'm in a faculty ID right now, so they already have access to it. I want you guys to focus in on the Ask a Legal Question button, and you probably won't be using the Summarize button at all. That's more for attorneys. It's a little too general for law students. You could use the Draft button if you're drafting client letters or you need some sort of form drafted for a client. And this is where you upload your own documents and Lexis can analyze it and you can ask legal questions of those documents you upload. But focusing in on the Ask a Legal Question button in this new upgrade to Lexis AI, you'll be able to do a better job at selecting the content you want so we can focus in on just civil law. And I have the jurisdiction set to all federal. All right, so I already did some of these for you. I'm just going to pull them up from the other day. And I used this prompt. Show me facts from federal cases and EEOC materials because Lexis AI does include agency materials in the database when employees are permitted to use prior salary as a differential based on any other factor other than sex, and that term is used by, and then the Equal Pay Act, I put in the name of the act, and then Lexis starts to analyze what I just gave it, giving me the names of cases. Now, I used a very specific formula here. Show me facts from federal cases and EEOC materials. That's the language of the prompt that really helps Lexis focus in on case law and their factual scenarios that you need to do your analyzing. So let's take a look at another one from another point of view. Show me facts from federal cases and the EEOC materials when employers are not permitted to use prior salary as a differential based on any other factor other than sex. And that term is used in, and I put the name of the law, which explain differences in pay between employees. So I'm basically trying to push Lexis to tell me in those cases when they were not allowed to use prior salary, what did employers use to explain the differences in pay? And we're seeing a lot of the same cases pop up, but I am getting a slightly different result set and a little bit different understanding of those cases because of what I typed in. Today, I typed in this query, and I'm just trying to show you how we can put in some extra facts from our own hypo to focus in on what we want Lexis to really pull from. Show me facts. I'm using the same formula from federal cases when an employer used a differential based on any other factor other than sex to explain why they paid a female employee less than a male employee because they lost a big account or lost the company a job or lost the company revenue. And once again, I'm getting some of these really good cases back up to help explain this particular situation. I took it a step further because I wasn't sure, well, maybe that's not exactly the scenario we're going for. I did it again, and this time I said because they were less committed to their job by putting in less time than the male employee. And I see a lot of the same cases, and this is good. This means that we are circling the right cases and starting to understand how those set of cases apply to our set of facts. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Please know that customer support is 24/7. It is always available to you. To get to customer support phone number, I'm here on my main research screen. I just scroll down and you'll see that phone number there. I want to make sure you guys know where to find the EEOC materials. It's really easy to do. You're going to go to practice area. We're going to scroll down and find labor and employment law. That's the practice area we're in. We're going to come down where you find agency materials for that practice area. Administrative materials are your agency materials and regulations. All labor and employment law administrative materials are located here. These are all the agency materials for labor law, and then we're going to scroll down to the E's to find your EEOC materials here. Thank you.